Hello, friends. This is Christopher Davis-Shannon, and yet again, we're hopping across the pond to the UK, but we're checking with someone a bit different than usual today. Robin Evans, welcome so much, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's a Friday night, and I have, well, I was going to say nothing else to do. There's no gigs happening, are there? So this is a very pleasurable way to spend the evening.
Yeah, so I'm happy that you're able to make time, and I'm even more happy that you have a cocktail with you to drink while you do this. Would you mind just kicking us off with a tune to start things off?
Sure, I'd love to.
Stumbling in the desert, my feet on the dusty ground. The echo of my footsteps follows me around. No food, no water in this drought. No life, no fire gets me up. Now I don't know where to go, and I don't know what's down below. But I'm feeling that my breathing's getting slow. In the dust bowl.
That was a little tune called Dust Bowl that was written by Robin himself. Now, Robin, you've cultivated a very distinctive aesthetic, but also sonic palette that you use in your live shows. I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about kind of both of those aspects of how you've created this semi-character that you use on stage, which I assume is really just an extension of who you truly are. So if we could first, let's talk about the sonic side of this. You have a very specific, gritty sound that even on stage when you play sounds like old 78 records, which I think is pretty darn cool. So how are you able to take that with mostly modern equipment that you're using and create that sort of sonic palette that you use on stage?
Okay, so it's my favorite thing is when you listen to the old blues records, the old jazz records, anything from before about 1950, and some of the stuff from the 50s, and it just sounds so crispy and crunchy, and that's not something you get a lot of nowadays. You know, even the blues rock that you hear, the distortion they use on the vocals is so artificial.
Oh,
I love it, but it's, you know, it's still sort of crispy, crunchy. So the way to do it is, I'm going to say this now, really cheap megaphones. This fella right here. Actually, if we get it off the thing is probably the easiest, because I've also got something else attached to it. There's two different microphones that I use on a daily basis. The megaphone, which is, you know, I think it's £5 on eBay. It's got 3 settings, which is speech, siren, or off, and the volume. And it just sounds like that. So you've also got a really tactile, I don't think tactile is the word. The closer you are to that, it gets really gritty. Whereas if you're further away, it just sounds like oh, turn it back on again. It just sounds normal. But if you sound over here, it sounds normal. But I wonder where here you're going to really get some noise in. And also my favourite thing is the...
Well, that's important to have.
really important.
Is that how you play yourself off stage when you're done a set? Just pretend the police are coming for you?
That's how I do it. I do the siren. I slowly fade it, especially if I've got a compare. If there's a compare, then like the hell's Robin at siren time, and see how long they can put it up for. Especially siren, stand up, guitar, play some more, kick something over. And the last time I did that, I kicked over my mic stand, which then fell into my amp, and there's a little rip in the Tolex, which I'm not very happy about because I got the amp like 3 weeks beforehand. It was
important though. That builds character and equipment to break it a little bit. I have my one upright bass has 2 very nice gouges in the side of the neck from a drummer dropping a hi-hat on it
exactly.
like a week after I got in the darn thing. But it's nice. It's kind of like a position marker on there. So you have to embrace that.
I know it's mine. Let's face it, the music that I play, you don't have nice equipment. Speaking of nice equipment, the other thing is this fella. This is a CB radio microphone, as they would use in a truck or something, which I bought on Facebook Marketplace and rewired. So it's now a XLR output.
Oh, cool.
Focus. And I've hotwired the switch completely closed. So that all the time will sound, I've not got an amp to plug it into. But it sounds crisp, it sounds crunchy. It's once again, if you're further away, it sounds relatively normal. The closer you get into it, it's gritty and lo-fi and disgusting. And if you actually want one of those, I do sell them on my website. I say sell them on my website, provided by the time this airs that I've got my merch store up on my website. But I do make them. They're all authentic. I use the original capacitors, or whatever, the capsules is the word I'm looking for, and just do a little bit of wiring, and it's just a nice gritty sound that has some feedback. It's not a monotonous, a monotonous amount of dirt. You can dirt it, you can de-dirt it, and it sounds really, if you a little bit of slapback delay on it. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's so cool. You think so many of us plug into tube amplifiers to get that overdriven, saturated sound, but we don't think of it too much for the voice aspect of changing the texture of our voice. We always think about just having it clean for the most part. I've seen a few other people that do what you do. There's a guy I met down in New Orleans years ago, Luke Winslow King. For a while, he drug like this old tube PA with it, but it was only like a 5-watt PAs. And he'd run the entire band into that, overdrive it, and then mic the speaker to send it to the front of the house. And I was like, it's just such an inventive way of thinking of it, especially when we're in an age now of everything being super clean and super perfect. Sure. And I mean, and you could just throw a distortion pedal in your chain, but I love that instead you found devices to do it independently. Lack of technology really is how you did it versus adding more technology. I have one of those, man. Yeah. That one of the old EVs?
Yeah, maybe. I've got the, no, I don't know what it is.
But that's got the old four-prong connector on it, right? So you can change
I'm in the process of rewiring, because the eventual aim is when I get enough gig money back in, I can put that into a 5-watt tube amp. Yeah. And just do that, as you're saying, through for the vocals. I've got my aim is to rewire a little valve radio, but I've realized that I'm probably going to electrocute myself if I do.
You probably are, but that's half the fun of working with tubes, is nearly dying.
Exactly. But I have apparently found some blokes who do it, and I'm like, maybe I could do that instead. Or even if I don't do it all tube, but using components from it, the speaker in that has got to be that wonderful amount of just trash, just even bits and bobs. So I could do a basic amplifier circuit and do it in that. But that's the eventual aim. Is then also I'd have a smaller vocal setup which I could move around, and you've got two, I'll stick that on top of the other amp. Bob's your uncle, big noise, loud music. Do you know the Big Beat Manifesto?
I do not, no.
The Big Beat Manifesto is big beats are the best, get high all the time, and that is the appropriate vibe for the music that we want.
I think I can agree with that. Actually, that sounds like a lovely way to listen to your music. Back to that radio you were just talking about. I mean, that could be an interesting aesthetic choice as well on stage if you use one of the old cases for the radios to have on stage with you. And there's also that aspect to it that we often overlook as performers, which is what do we actually look like on stage. I see so many people that show up to play gigs, even playing old blues music in shorts and a t-shirt and sneakers, and it destroys my soul, for lack of a better term. What got you into, I mean, you have this character that you use on stage, this very specific aesthetic. You're always dressed up. You have makeup on. No one, I mean, it's great branding, and no one's ever going to question who you are nor forget you. But what got you to your point? What's your journey into becoming the Robin Evans Esquire? Speaking of, where'd you get your law degree?
You know you're what about. Esquire in the UK means you own land. I do not have a law degree. I will never have a law degree. My undergraduate is in marine biology, and however much of a passion it is of mine, it is currently not the field in which I pursue.
Oh, well, at least maybe one day you could be a landowner, so it'll be true. I mean, there's that aspect of it.
Technically, I am now a landowner. I bought a house just before lockdown. I say bought a house. I have a mortgage, which means I think the bank probably owns
the bank owns you. But so you are indeed an esquire. You just cannot help me in my various legal disputes in this world.
Yeah, you would. I'm more than happy to, but you won't want me to.
Well, if I'm in the UK and I have legal trouble, I'll contact you and we'll talk about it. How we can make that.
We will have a great time.
Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. So back to your stage presence.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
because I'm assuming this is not something that you woke up one day and said, I'm going to wear this. I'm going to cultivate this entire look. How did you get here? What's the journey?
So I've always dressed smart. It's because I have, some people like yourself are gifted with a long and tall body shape where you can make clothes sort of work on you just by hanging them on in any way, shape or form. Mine is more of the potato-ish variety, and what I need is a big strong shoulders and a shirt with a collar, otherwise it's just a bit. So I've worn bow ties and jackets and whatnot since the dawn of fashion sense, I think, which was when I was about 15, and then I thought I could dress better than a hoodie. And so the suits, it's a very natural thing for me. Then the face paint and the hat. I mean, the hat I found in a charity shop for £10. Bloody good deal. He said, yeah, a little bit cockney, it's a decent hat. I've got a bit of paint on it, but nothing won't come out in wash. And not that I'm going to wash my hat. The face paint was more, but I've always been attracted to the weird stuff. I love Tom Waits. He's a big influence. I love that David Bowie sort of Ziggy Stardust era. I mean, glam rock is not my thing, but there's a whole sort of aspect of it, and I just enjoy that gothic horror sort of vibe. I used to be really into reading gothic horror books when I was a teenager, and also a little bit Alfred Hitchcock, a little bit what's the one I'm thinking of? A little bit that Victorian gothic horror, like the really old school stuff. And it's just nice to be a little bit spooky, I think, more than anything else. Maybe it doesn't come across as spooky. Maybe it comes across as he's a twat wearing makeup, which you're not wrong. You're not wrong in the slightest.
But you're also spooky, and that's important.
Also on stage, it's spooky. It's about being a little bit different. It's about doing something cool. And for me, I also work I say currently, like I'm going to get like big and made it. Nah, that doesn't happen when you wear face paint. I do work in a customer service job in a relatively large department store in the city centre of Norwich. And I just don't want to be recognised as much at work. Part of my music is busking. I don't tend to do the face paint for the busking often. I do sometimes, it depends on the day. Saturdays, yeah. Tuesday, let's just do sunglasses. So I like I'm also using my real name, which is not a good idea, but I like the anonymity of it a little bit. It makes me look less like me and more like someone else, which is, I think, what we all want to be. Because you don't see, maybe not the best example, but you see, we'll go with my favorite example. Carly Rae Jepsen on stage is probably not the same Carly Rae Jepsen that she is off stage.
I like that is your favorite example. Of all the choices in the world. Oh, sweet baby Jesus. Okay. Okay. I have no more questions in that case.
I
Right, and that goes for anyone, I think. And we learn early on as performers that you are yourself on stage. Let's be honest. I mean, you are who you are, but you're generally an exaggerated version of that, because when you're on stage, you have to be, or else it does. Just being yourself, no one is that big of a personality that it just translates. You always have to turn it up at least a little bit on stage. And I know myself, I learned a lot from watching old vaudeville shows and the old acts from the 20s and 30s and Roy Smeck and the early silent films, because there's a lot that comes out of that, a lot of the shtick and a lot of the exaggerated movements that are really necessary when you're putting on a stage show. And these are kind of some of the things that we don't think about too much. We think about ourselves as people who play music, but that's like maybe 25% of actually performing is playing the music, and so much more is every other little aspect that sets you apart from the rest of the crowd. Because I mean, you certainly don't blend in so well at Uke Fests.
It's me being lazy, really. Instead of engaging the audience with my witty banter or my charming personality, we go for a bit of face paint. We say some weird crap through a megaphone, and we put the siren on for a bit, and then they're like, okay, what's going on here? It makes it easier. And I think there's always going to be a guitarist better than you. There's always going to be a ukulele better than you. Even yourself, Christopher, and you're up there. But you know,
I could name 20 people that will bury me on any instrument that I play in a heartbeat, and that's why I keep doing it.
The only exception to that is I don't know anyone in my personal life who's better than me at the musical saw, but that is because I only know.
I'm going to send you a video later.
Do you play the musical saw? If so,
I know a guy, and he plays actually in a gypsy jazz project. Plays musical saw, incredible, and I'll link to it down below.
Oh, please do. I mean, that's my one thing. When lockdown started, I thought right now is a good time to learn the saw, and I started learning the saw, and then I sort of stopped learning because you can't play the saw by yourself.
No,
it's a band instrument. And I have been a one-man band for far too long now, and I can't play in time. So I've shafted myself there with the saw, sort of. Yeah. But anyway, that's
it. I actually retook up clarinet during lockdown. Is when I have not played in 12 years or so. So I very much enjoyed it. But it's kind of the same thing. Not really a solo instrument. I've gotten so used to playing chordal instruments over the years. Now I'm practicing clarinet, and I'm annoying myself, and I feel very terrible for my upstairs neighbor who has to listen to it for an hour a day.
The clarinet it's one of my favorites. When you get a good jazz band, you get that interplay with your trumpet, your trombone, your clarinet.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, I managed to score a silver clarinet from the early 1930s with a more modern keying system on it. And it's an instrument I've wanted since I was a teenager, and I managed to grab one, and it's a lot of fun. No one else in my life likes it, so that's how I know that I'm doing it right. Is if I'm pissing off everyone around me, I'm doing it correctly. That's how I think about music. Speaking of music, Robin, could you play us another tune?
Love to.
Judge, please, Mr. Judge, I submit to the electric chair. Judge, please, Mr. Judge, I want to get out of here. Well, I want to take a journey to the devil down below. A slice of my string, baby, I gotta reap what I sow. I said, Judge, gonna sit me down there. Well, I caught her with my Barlow. I kicked her in the side. I stood there laughing over her while she wallowed around and died. I said, Judge, Judge, please, Mr. Judge, send me to the lady.
Rob, that was a great old tune, Electric Chair, that's been recorded so many times throughout the years. So that this always begs the question for me when I'm talking to people that live in Europe and beyond that play Americana music is how did this become such a prominent aspect of your life, not growing up in America?
There's a few different reasons. I think it's one of those, it accumulates over the years, and America is such a cultural force. You can't avoid it. You can't actually avoid Americana. You hear a little bit, and if you like it, you just sort of end up in a deep delving trail. For me, when I was a lot younger, my dad listened to a lot of jazz, and he had a lot of sort of Bob Dylan-esque folk, and he's gonna kill me for saying just Bob Dylan-esque. Lots of different sorts of folk, and also blues. So he listened to a lot of that when I was growing up, but I didn't really, at the time, when you're like 7 or 8, you don't think that's cool. I like some of the jazz perhaps, but really I sort of listened to probably a lot more pop music then. And then a few years ago, I started listening to more of it. I started listening to more Americana. I got really into Tuba Skinny, the jazz band.
If anyone's not familiar with Tuba Skinny, I think we've actually mentioned them on the show before. I'm just going to link to their website down below. Absolutely my favorite New Orleans street band, which is so much more than a street band these days. They tour all over the world, but some of the finest interpreters of traditional New Orleans jazz music existing today.
That's it, Tuba Skinny, and then that got me down a really big sort of early trad jazz hole, Big Spiderbeck, that sort of thing, and a lot of the guys that are doing it at the minute, and I liked their almost DIY aspect. If you think about the other bands, the other street bands from New Orleans, like Yes Mom, and they use the suitcase drum kit, which is where I got part of my suitcase drum kit idea. And I like there's a rawness to it, but there's also it just lures you in. And so from there, I sort of ended up listening to more 20s, 30s, sometimes 40s music, and it drew me into the blues. So I listened to a lot of Robert Johnson, a fair amount of Charlie Patton, some Skip James, some Bukka White, and it was also at the time when I listened to, in my early teens, a lot of the Black Keys. Big fan of the Black Keys. Their music is fantastic. Their early garage stuff is wonderful, and then the later stuff, which is more finely produced, is the hooks in that are fantastic. There's some really, really good at hooks, and Hendrix, and more Led Zeppelin, and more that classic rock sort of vibe. And you draw the line. You draw a line from Tuba Skinny to Led Zeppelin, and it all sort of comes into that 30s Delta blues. And so
it's something I talk about with my students a lot, is that the lineage of American music is just so vast over the past 150 years. And if you want to learn Zeppelin, you want to learn the Stones, any of that stuff, that comes out of Charlie Patton. I mean, that's like pre-blues era music that we're talking about, and that's where it all comes from. And it's important to understand those earlier recordings so that we can fully understand all of that later work that's really built on that singular foundation of blues, which is like the true American idiom of music. And even jazz, we think of as jazz now, post-bop jazz and all of that all grew out of those bands in New Orleans in the brothels. But that's where we get those first concepts of swing and open improvisation. And it's had such a cultural impact, even outside of the music world, in the entire world, not just in America. And that's why I love seeing, especially younger people like yourself overseas, playing this type of music, because I think it's this one cultural thing that America has really been able to bestow upon the world, and it's a beautiful thing.
It's fantastic. I mean, the songs there's something quite raw about them. You can't deny that, but also just the sound of it. I I love the crackle you get with every track. I love the sound of the slide on the guitar strings. It's not always clean. It doesn't always ring out. You get the odd, I'm not going to say drum note, because actually it makes the song better. And I think we've grown
Of
up.
course, the out of tune guitar is one of my favorite aspects.
Yeah.
You listen to like John Hurt's Library of Congress recordings, and he must be down like a minor third, kind of in tune on half the recordings, and they sound amazing. They're just absolutely incredible. You know, it's like it transcends what I think of as music to an extent.
Sounds so good. I have the same. A lot of people will complain about this. Is slight deviation. A lot of people complain about sort of like the Mahalo ukuleles, the really cheap wooden plastic, but it's its own sound. You don't compare it to a Koaloa because they sound fucking fantastic. If you want to bleep that, you're welcome to. But if you don't want it, that's also
no, thank you. We'll put an explicit warning on this. But, you know, there's something to be said for that. Like Koalohas, I've played so many of these, you know, $5,000 custom-made ukes and things like that. They don't do anything for me. None of them ever have. Most people have seen the instrument that I play for the most part was made over in the UK. It's a Wunderkammer. It's my main instrument. It's a simple instrument, but it captures that sound that I'm looking for, and finding the instrument that does what you need it to do is way more important than what's the best ukulele that I can buy in the entire, like, I don't know, man. It depends what you want to do with your sound.
Sure.
And as you were talking a little bit about your equipment earlier, you have a bunch of guitars behind you, and none of them are crazy top of the line things, but they get you your sound, and that's so important.
I've even got a minute. I made this last year, and that makes a beautiful sound.
Yeah. I need to finish mine. I have a neck for a cigar box uke that I haven't gotten to put together yet. We did in January, actually, before the world fell apart. My fiddle player and I drove down to New Orleans and played a cigar box guitar festival down there.
Oh, wonderful!
It was 3 days of homemade instruments with these incredible players playing them, and you figure most of those early blues players that you're talking about started off on things like diddly bows and cigar box guitars because you could build them. They were free, they were cheap. I was talking about this with a class a couple weeks ago, that even when we're talking about blues, a lot of people think it's silly to play blues on ukulele, but then we look at the lineage of jug band music and even early blues. A lot of those people did play uke because it was cheap and it was accessible. A guitar costs, you know, $10, a uke cost $1. That's huge difference.
Exactly that. I mean, for the ukulele I've got to go grab it. That's the easiest way to explain it. Is you want an instrument, if you're playing the blues, it's got a bit of funk to it. This one, this is a old 70s, probably Japanese, might be 60s, might be 50s, not in tune, but it's got
right.
You know,
get that nice slap neck.
You want that funk and the sort of I don't really play it very often. I need to get it refretted, and I've done some bad things to it, but it sounds more authentic. It sounds more true to it's not about how beautiful things sound. It's about the emotion, about the feeling, and it's so easy to get lost in the beauty of the guitar, which is not what 90% of people don't give a shit what the instrument sounds like. They want to hear the words and they want to have a good time.
Right. And the other thing that I was thinking about when recording and in live sound aspect as well is for most people, they don't care about your solo. They don't care that you messed up some lyrics in the chorus. They care about the overall sound that is being presented to them. And that says so much. I know you just got done recording a series of singles, and you record this in the way that they should be recorded for this type of music, which is with a single mic to tape. And you can't fake that sound is the thing. You can't multi-track record something and then put a plug-in on it and be like, it sounds like this. It's impossible. What drew you into doing a record that way? Because obviously we have much easier ways of making records and now, but that's an endeavor because tape's expensive and you can't screw up too much.
Part of it was there was the opportunity too. I think if there wasn't anyone local that did it, would I have bothered? Probably not. But there's a lovely chap called Jason. He runs a studio called The Crunch. It's fantastic. It's on RAF bass, and it's actually in a bunker,
Cool.
which is very strange. Not what you expect. And you go in, and it's an old munitions bunker. It's a little bit scary, especially because I was going there at night time. It's right next to a prison. So you sort of you go in, and there's a light on. There's Jason's off in the booth right at the back. There's nothing there apart from like some old organs and so much weird shit, which is wonderful. And you go in, and he knows just what to do. He only records analog, really, and he's a very nice man. He knew exactly what I was going for, so we did it, as you said, just one microphone that records out the front and out the back. So I sit here with it like that, guitar or ukulele, whatever, just there, and then I've got my amp, 10 meters back. Because you've got.
What kind of? Are you using a ribbon mic?
It was a ribbon mic, yeah, I believe. It was from the 50s, and I can't remember what it was now because.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Ribbon mic straight to tape. Just the way that they deal with like transient response is so cool.
We gave it a bit of compression. We set all the levels, and then I sang louder, so you can get that really. When Muddy Waters does just the howl or Howling Wolf, just
and that's the joy of you doing busking work as well. A lot of singers nowadays get so used to relying on a microphone for everything, and when you busk, you realize how loud you actually have to sing if you want to be heard over top of. You play mostly resophonic instruments; they're loud, even not plugged in. And bringing that to the studio and giving yourself the breath support to be able to sing that loud is so important to getting that authentic sound. It was like there's Bucka White Records.
Yeah.
Screaming, man. Sunhouse as well. Sunhouse, it's like a preacher is just yelling at you through there, and that's such a large, much like you were talking about the instrument sound. That's such a large part of it as well, is the way that the vocals are treated.
So you've got to just get it so it actually hits home. I think it's so easy to think, I'll just do this one slowly and nicely. Certainly when, like in lockdown, I only play at home, so I don't really want to. Got neighbours that side, I've got neighbours that side. I don't want to be too loud.
I've given up on trying to appease my neighbors, and they've given up on me.
Yeah, at some point you have to. Unfortunately, I've just moved in, so I don't really want to.
You don't want to be that guy. I understand.
I don't want to be that guy. I sometimes play in the garden, but yeah. So it was just one. We did I will confess, there was a little bit of multi-tracking, but it was still in the reel-to-reel. It was still all tape, and that involved, you stick the microphone in one corner, and I go stand in the other corner with a maraca and just go like that. That's fine. And I was trying to do a bass drum. Oh, the drums. You've got two drums. One from both from the 30s. And one was a really nice big one, but it sounded a bit too circusy, so we went for the other one, which was a little bit tighter. And just you stand like 10 meters that way, or I don't know what that is in foot for your American viewers, but that way. And you hit that, and then I was with this 1930s wood block as well, which was from the same thing. It's like an ex-circus drum kit or something. Just hitting that, and God, I'm a shit drummer, but it sounds in the mix. It sounds just great.
Yeah. And there's nothing like true just tape saturation on when you overdrive it just a little bit. Because for people that don't do a lot of recording, the thing with analog gear with recording to tape is in the digital world. If the signal's too high, we have too much amplitude, it clips and it just gives us this grating, terrible, distorted sound. In the analog world, when we hit tape, it clips, but the tape doesn't have anything to peak at. So it just rolls over and it distorts the signal a little bit. And especially with bass drums, because of how it handles the lower frequencies, you could get this really gritty sound that you just can't imitate. One of my favorite things.
We used as well, and I know that everything else was old inspired, but we did use a gem organ with auto chord on for one bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want a little bit of organ, but it still fits. It sounds. That's for one of the tunes that's a little bit more not horror. I mean, it's a bit more horror, and so actually a bit of organ in there. Yeah, let's do it. It's not nice smooth organ. It's a bit clunky organ because we taught ourselves. I say we taught ourselves. Jason knows how to play organ, but he's like, you're going to do it. So I taught myself to play organ in 10 minutes with the auto key, which does it in minor or seventh if you want to, or you can do both a minor seventh. But let's not go wild. So that was, it's nice to have something a little bit different, and it still fits with the whole vibe, that Southern Gothic, Delta blues, Americana country sort
Right.
of
Oh
thing.
yeah, Oregon so much so. That's, you know, coming out of the gospel
Yeah.
repertoire as well. Oregon was so important in a lot of those recordings, especially when we get to the 40s and 50s. You know, and man, it continues on. So actually, one of my favorite records to this day is, Jerry, are you familiar with Jimmy Smith? He was kind of the first jazz organist that came out of a blues gospel idiom, but he has this record called Groovin' at Smalls. It's just B3 organ, guitar, and drums, and it's like one of the most raw, beautiful things I've ever heard on a record. I'll send that to you. It's a fun one. Robert, would you mind playing us one of those tunes that you're going to be releasing?
I would love to, yeah. Why not? Let's do it.
Been drinking badger milk. I drink it all day long. Been drinking badger milk, yeah, I drink it all day long. Been drinking badger milk, but I can't keep it down for long.
Robin, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join me and chat about all things music.
It's been good fun. It's been a lovely way to start the evening, and you know, I'm not going to say hope we'll do it again sometime, because let's face it, we probably won't do it again sometime, because I'm not doing anything interesting music for a while, and you've got a lot of people to talk to. Yeah, I've very much enjoyed it. It's nice because I've been watching the series on and off, and had a good look today with a lot of people. So it's nice to be up in that hallowed hall of fame of the video playlist.
Yeah, well, I hope one day I get over to the UK soon to hear you play in person. It will happen. It's been too long coming, and obviously not happened this year, but hopefully next. So we'll see.
When gigs happen again, I think
Exactly.
a lot nicer, really, won't it?
And until gigs happen, I'm going to link down below to all of Robin's social media and website and all that jazz. So you can check out those new singles that he has coming out very soon. And Robin, if you wouldn't mind, could you just play us out with a little tune?
We can do that.